It'll show if you put your chat on, but don't worry. If I raise my finger like this, that means finish your sentence. And your thought.
Is that the finger you're going to raise, Inez?
Yes.
Is that the finger?
Because it's on Zoom.
Have you ever wondered what hypnosis might be and what it can do for you? You've come to the right place. Welcome to Hypnosis-Everywhere with your host, Inez Simpson. This is the show that talks to everyone, from the experienced practitioner to the cautiously curious, and yes, even the skeptics. Now, here's Inez Simpson.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Hypnosis Everywhere with my sidekick, Martin Gover, who's off screen. And anyway, on Voice America, you can only hear him, so that's just fine. And I'm having a great guest on today. She's been on before. She's one of my favorites. We meet, at different conventions and stuff, and I've known her for quite a while. And so I'm just going to say this is Melissa Tears, not Melissa Pierce, by the way, for anybody who's got that wrong. It's with a T. So Melissa Tears and I have been sort of friends for at least a decade. So I know her, and I feel very comfortable that she can carry a show or 10 shows maybe. So here's Melissa, and I just get her to give you a slight little, just a short bio, and just in case someone doesn't know who you are, because we have regular population, maybe only 10-50% are hypnotists.
10-50% are hypnotists.
10 to 15. I don't think 50.
Oh, 10 to 15. Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's interesting. So I'm here in New York City. I'm a founder of the Center for Integrative Hypnosis. I teach courses in, integrative hypnosis and neurolinguistic psychology and practical neuroscience. As Inez says, we've known each other actually for longer than a decade. I'm going to say 15, 16 years.
Oh, maybe it is that long.
I think so.
I was just making sure.
I've been in this mind field for over 20 at this point, and I'm always learning, always expanding. To me, that's the fantastic thing about this field we're in, is that there's no cap on it. Inez, we're never going to sit down and have a conversation where we say, and we know all there is to know about hypnosis, or all there is to know about the mind, or all there is to know about consciousness.
That's what's so exciting about this. Is you never get bored, ever.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
My daughter was stressing out as she picks her college courses today, because so many of them were taken. And what they do now is they go and rate the teacher. So before she commits to any class, she goes to this website and hears all the feedback of the teachers. And one of the worst things you can hear is that they drone on and they're boring. And I always say that that's one of the unfortunate things when people get to a point where they're bored with their own, their own material, their own subject. And in this field, because it's just an ever expanding one, and, with each study that comes out of not just neuroscience, but embodied cognition and priming and unconscious biases and heuristics. And there's this whole slew of research coming out on the adaptive unconscious and just how much of our processing is outside of conscious awareness. And the more popular that becomes, the more people realize just how unconsciously driven every single, thing that they do is, the more they start to seek out that type of, modalities and information that can tell them more, that can teach them more. So I think it's only getting even more exciting,
I know it is for me. I don't know how anyone can be in this field and think of it as a job or think of it as a way to make money. I mean, I know that's how we make our living, but if that's what you're thinking about, it seems crazy. I wouldn't.
Well, and I think it's evident in the subset of this field that is in it for, they kind of found their thing. It's the only thing they're interested in. They kind of stopped learning. And those are the people that, they don't last long in this field, I believe, because they're catering to a very set
set mindset.
Yeah. So anyway, so I think it's exciting. You and I are always having a conversation, and every time we touch base, it's intriguing, because we're traveling and learning more and incorporating other modalities into our skill set. And as I said, for me, I'm pretty brain centric.
Yes.
And have been for many years. But the
yes.
beautiful thing is now I'm starting to, expand that as well to the entire nervous system. And, all of the things that expand beyond that. I was just teaching a course on embodied cognition and just how embodied our thought processing is. We think it's all in the brain, but really there's enough receptors that go from the body to the brain to kind of balance that out.
I kind of love it because supposedly science is sort of catching up with what we already had, stuff we were doing, and now it has a name scientifically, and I think that's great. I'm not knocking it.
Yeah.
But it's something, it's easy that we are actually starting to come around to a place where they're starting to meet a little bit more than they used to.
Oh, yeah. Well, to me, in my world and in my work, they've always met.
Yeah.
One informs the other.
Yeah.
And so it's what keeps me expanding.
It's fine
I'll read
for
a study
us,
and then
but
I'll say, how can I make it applicable? How can I take this and make it practical?
Yeah.
What does this mean for my work? What does this mean for my clients? How can we change faster and more easily and more fluidly?
See, I think there's people like us for sure that we do that. And then there's all the people sitting that only know so much and they haven't broadened their mind yet to that. And I think that's what's happening. Maybe I was, stating it wrong. I think there's more and more people willing to listen and see where everything goes now.
Sure. Well, to me, it's all about, there's something I harp on in my trainings a lot, which is getting conscious buy-in. And too often, practitioners in this field, they kind of denigrate or diminish the conscious mind, as if we just need to push it aside and then we can speak, and that's that to me is gets us nowhere fast, in that we have a conscious mind for a reason. We have an inner narrative. We have stories that we tell ourselves and others. And if you're not speaking to that part as well, then you're missing the driver, on many levels.
Yes.
And so for me, conscious buy-in is being able to tell the New Yorkers that I work with why that hadn't been working and why this will, why they want to do these techniques, and explain to them that this habituated pattern in their brain is easily changeable if they know how to do it. And here's how to do it. And so, because I'm always informing them about neuroplasticity and the ways in which their behavior, their thought processing, their repetitive emotional states have built these kind of neuro associations, and then how to strategically dismantle that. And so when you give someone that information, they become more empowered, and it becomes a cooperative approach. And that is a big part of what I do, and I think without the conscious buy-in, and this is where
you
science
need the
informs.
Conscious buy-in.
Always. So
Always.
This is where science informs, because people are used to believing certain things, right? Mm-hmm. And in our culture, one of the easiest ways to change someone's belief system is so they did this research study, or, this is what they're finding. And so all of a sudden we're used to changing what we do based on, the current understanding of it. And so I find that it really helps my clients to not only, take some of the mystery away from why they hadn't been able to change, but also a roadmap as to how the brain changes and how they can do it themselves.
Well, talking about that, I thought maybe I'd steer you into something I'm kind of interested in now. And I'd like to talk a little bit about your hypno psychedelics.
Hypno-psychedelics. So
It sounds good. I want to hear about it.
well, as you know, we were just talking about, I'm always expanding, right? And for me, I think the last time you and I had this conversation, we were talking about self-directed neuroplasticity. And it's a big part of what I do. There's this other layer where I get really strategic, really almost myopic when it comes to how to do kind of synaptic manipulation utilizing hypnosis. And it's really about getting more and more specific in order to encourage the brain to generalize the change. And so it's a bit of a deductive processing form. The other side of that, and the reason I do that is because typically people come in with these big issues, these big problems, whether it's anxiety or, these huge, what we would call nominalizations, which are things that used to be processes and have been frozen or stuck. It used to be a verb and now it's a noun. And these are the things, that people come in with. And the best way to change that we have found is to go for specific instances, light up the relevant neural network, introduce change, and do it again, and do it again, and do it again until the brain goes generative. And that's pretty much the rule in how I work. The exception to that rule is what I call higher order change. And this is what happens when people have that epiphany, that aha moment, that transcendent perceptual shift. And all of the new current enthusiasm for the psychedelic states, and all of the new research coming out on the use of psychedelics for anxiety, for addictions, for hospice care, for end of life. I mean, NYU is doing studies. Almost every big established institution is now dabbling once again in this area for damn good reason. When you shake up the habituated neural firing that we as humans with repetitive thoughts and behaviors tend to get stuck in these ruts. And what the psychedelic research is telling us is that if you go into these extraordinary perceptual positions, then you can get a higher order of change that is, that doesn't fall under the rule of Hebbian law, which is neurons that fire together, wire together, and then you would need repetition. This defies repetition. It can happen in one shot. And whether it's the mystical experience people have, whether it's, that transcendence, someone who has a heart attack and in that moment changes their entire life, these are moments where we step up. We have a quantum leap in consciousness. And so for me, I always, in all of these interviews that I often do over the years, because, I'm lucky in that people enjoy my work, right? So they buy my books and they come to my classes. And so I'm often asked the origin story. I think you might have asked me a couple of times as well, what got you into this? And I always say, the main driver for me is curiosity. That is what got me into this field. That is what keeps me in this field. That is what keeps me excited and learning. But the other aspect of my origin story is a magic mushroom trip I had when I was 19 in Central Park. And I think without that, I certainly wouldn't be sitting here talking to you, because it was a moment where all I can say is my perception shifted so absolutely drastically that the malleability of mind became really crystal clear to me. Not only that, right? I understood something. There was a flash, there was a moment. I understood something really important about, reality. And in that moment, I felt like I knew something. And of course, then it was gone. And I spent, the next 30 years trying to get it back with every other kind of drug you could possibly
I've heard that
imagine.
story so many times from many people.
Well, because it's true, right? All of
Yep.
a sudden, what you thought was stuck reality, your own perceptual reality tunnel, can be so shaken up and drastically transformed. So for me, that got me fascinated with altered states of consciousness. That got me fascinated with learning how to trigger these states without the drugs. Because I figure if my brain can do that, that means that there must be a receptor on those cells that drug latches onto, which means we must make it. And indeed we do. So now my work is all about how do we inspire that? How do we use hypnosis to kind of stimulate these deeper states of consciousness, these deeper changes? And so I taught a class at Hypnothoughts Live last year on Hypno-Psychedelics and combining.
You probably didn't have enough room in the place.
Oh my God! It was a standing room only. People were sitting all over the floors. It was fascinating in that we were just playing. I was like, "Here's what we're gonna do." I started to bring in certain types of breath work and kind of combining that with different states of hypnosis, going deep in and then extraordinarily out and having a lot of fun. But really it's about looking for that higher order change.
Yeah, I don't know. It kind of cracks me up because you and I, we don't talk very often. And when we do, it's just like we've been friends forever, and which is true. And the whole thing about it is that we end up going in similar places. I haven't talked to you in about 2 years. And we're in this always thinking in the same lines in just different way, totally different way, right? And it's so interesting.
Has it been 2 years? Didn't I just
think
see you?
I haven't met you at a convention by luck lately anywhere.
Really interesting.
No, it hasn't. Huh. So we've got 1 minute till break. So if you want to have a last thought here or whatever,
I mean, as far as, that topic, the hypno-psychedelics goes, it's really about expansion. It's about how do we use our tool set to create these kind of magical moments of change, because the conscious buy-in comes into play here as well.
Sure does.
When you dose somebody with this type of magical transformative experience using hypnosis, then you've opened the door to the possibility that change can be easier than they thought.
Yeah, that's
that
my
the thing
big
they've
line.
Been talking about for 30 years in therapy all of a sudden can shift on a dime, so that's an exciting idea.
So that's what I do too. I'll just say, if you want to come and work with me or whatever, all I need you to be is open to possibility. Yeah. Open to what you're going to feel, sense, or know, or, anything.
Sure.
And, Terence McKenna and all those types were very into all this. And I know, just like you, that we can just get it with hypnosis. So on that topic, I think that's really great. Well, guess what? I don't know if our minutes last longer, but we have some more time, like a half a minute or something. But it's true, though, isn't it? I mean, there's so much. I have one of my students that does that kind of work. Pardon?
On your lead.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. So we're going to go on break, and I'll see you on the other side. Thanks.
All right.
How come that minute took forever? Welcome back to Hypnosis Everywhere with Melissa Tiers, and we're going to keep talking a little bit about transformation and how the conscious mind is needed just as well as the subconscious mind. Many hypnotists tend to dwell on the subconscious mind, but I keep telling clients, this is your whole mind is all one, and you just have to have. That's why I spend so much time, and I think you do, on teaching your clients and giving them enough education to do that.
Well, also, this idea of the separate, as you said, it's all one. It's a continuum, consciousness. There's, this very small bit that we call the conscious mind. It's simply the part that is aware of as we're talking. It is that part that kind of can, worry about the future and ruminate about the past, because time exists for the conscious mind, not so all the unconscious processing.
No.
And so that is the timeless part. But it is also, in my world, it's not a thing, the unconscious mind, as if it's some thing. It is simply all that you are not currently conscious of. It is the deeper unconscious processing that goes on, below the hood, below the surface. And
right.
Sometimes we have access to some aspects of it. Sometimes our job is to drag from the unconscious to the conscious people's processing. When I point out kind of the images there, when I point out their unconscious strategies for how they're doing this problem, how they keep it going, and then how can we manipulate even the features of mind in order to change how they feel. So I think it's more about giving people a narrative they can understand. These days, I kind of look at my work as embodying 3 different levels, right? So when I work with people, I've got the self-directed neuroplasticity. And for those of you that don't know what that means, because I realize not everyone's a hypnotist on the show, or listening to this show. Self-directed neuroplasticity in my world is a protocol. It's a set of different techniques designed to change the brain. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change. It is always changing with every new learning, with every new thing that you're doing. And your brain tends to take the shape of what it is you do consciously and unconsciously, right? What it is you do repetitively. So the first level is I give people different ways of stopping it, whatever it is, whether it is a craving, it is anxiety, it is the habituated loop they're going through, with this idea that each time they interrupt it, they can kind of segue out of the habituated groove and create new neural connections. So that's the first level. It's how do I arm my clients to change their own brain based on the current research on neuroplasticity, the work of Jeffrey Schwartz and Joseph Ledoux and a bunch of other pioneers that have access to fMRI machines, which I don't. The second layer is how can I be very strategic in guiding them to neutralize all of the triggers, right? The external triggers that tend to trigger their unwanted behavior or emotional states or patterns, right? So that's about using another form of neuroplasticity, typically therapeutic memory reconsolidation, which is simply being able to access the neural network involved in the problem and change the emotional track of it. That's kind of what's really exciting these days. Only in the last 5 to 10 years are we aware of therapeutic memory reconsolidation. We can talk more about that in a moment. The third layer of it is the meaning making, right? How do we help our clients into clarity and understanding, right? When I first started, I remember in an LP class, they were like, stay away from why. Don't ask why. Why could take you 20 years of psychotherapy. You want when and how and what,
I remember.
But no why.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, I really did. I stayed away from the why. Why is this happening, right? Because that's not as useful as how is this happening so that we can change it. Yeah. Where is this happening? When does this happen? But one of the things over the years, you work with people long enough, and as I said, it's 20 years in, you start to realize that why is vital. That's what makes us human. That's what separates us from every other animal, or, well, that we know of, is that we need a why, an understanding, a narrative. And so the deeper states of trance give us that clarity. Right, so it's the third level of my work that is vital there, and that's where the hypno-psychedelics come in. it's not just for fun. It's not just to, to play with your, it's not a party drug. It's really, how do we access these states for higher order change and understanding and clarity, And so I think that with all of these levels, getting conscious buy-in is vital in that it helps people to understand what we're doing. Now, most of my, private clients come by way of psychiatrists at this point. And so I need to, be able to satisfy not just the client's conscious buy-in, but the psychiatrists. They need to have some understanding, some shared language of what we're doing, right? Mm-hmm. We need to take hypnosis out of the, the dark ages and into the light. And it is about understanding what is going on when we do what we do. Yeah. And you had said something earlier that, and there's a great quote, which is, the scientists climbed the mountain and they found the mystics waiting there for them. In that science is catching up with a lot of the things that we have been doing forever. Even in the, the old shamanic cultures and, the Egyptian sleep temples, they were all using trance to make transformation happen. And so for me, conscious buy-in goes way beyond just talking about neuroplasticity and how they can change their brain into more specific, look at how you keep this anxiety structure going. Mm-hmm. Look at, you're making an image, you're then talking to yourself, you're then feeling it, then you make a higher order metacognition about it. And with all these three pieces, watch what happens when we manipulate each one. And so people have many different ways to change,
It's true. And, this is very funny because most people think of me as a little woo-woo. And
you are.
And most people think of you as very scientific, and yet we're always on the same page.
Yeah. Well, Inez, the first time I saw you teach, I think it was about 16. I think it was your first workshop you gave at an NGH.
Okay. Yeah, I think so. Okay? I remember. Yep.
And I had been getting a little burnt out with some of the classes I was going to. And somebody asked you a question, Inez, and you turned around and you said, I don't know. Like, you actually said, I don't know, but it's a really good question. And right away, I was like, that is the most refreshing thing I've heard today. Because of course, how could she know? It was a question like, that we couldn't possibly know. But your quick, readily, I don't know, but it's a great question, endeared you to me immediately. Because it shows something. It shows a willingness to learn. Because if you know everything, you're not open to learning.
No.
True. I love that. Out. I love the quote that conviction is what you get when you stop thinking, And so yes, we are on seemingly
different paths.
Two ends of a continuum.
Yeah.
With me looking for the hard evidence and the research and, like excited about each new research study that comes out, and you over here kind of playing in these, semi woo-woo states. But I do think that where we meet is the important part, mm-hmm. which is the willingness to learn, the willingness to be wrong.
Yeah.
The openness to discover something else, and being able to say, I don't fucking know. Shit. I wasn't going to curse. That's all right. It's radio, right?
You're New York. What am I going to say?
So, yeah. So to me, I think once we acknowledge all of these different aspects of mind that come into play when we make changes, that, there is no unconscious mind that is a separate entity from the conscious mind. It is a continuum, and one informs the other constantly. It is a two-way street, So for me, it's about really playing into that
Yep.
so that change is easier.
It's very important to remember that conscious mind.
Yeah, well,
Hypnosis. I
that's
think so. In hypnosis, and you're right. Some people just don't. They want to. I do. I say it's bypass of the the conscious mind, but you still need to have the conscious mind know what's happening. The conscious mind is the most important part. It's walking around here, talking. I mean, their whole mind's there walking around, but that's the only awareness of what's happening around them is consciously. Till it's drawn from the unconscious and given to them, then that changes that awareness too.
Well, also, if you don't, then you're not really teaching people anything that they can then utilize on their own.
Yeah. And you and I are both about that. We want our clients to be able to do self-work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think that's really the most important part. If we give them the gift to work with themselves, they can choose to use it or not.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But we give it to all our clients.
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. So, I had mentioned a couple of things. One was memory reconsolidation. And I think this is something that I harp on quite a lot, simply because it is just not common knowledge how memory works. And if it was, then we would have to readjust many things in our society, but let's just seriously, let's give a very quick, in a nutshell. First, memory reconsolidation, as it's been known for quite a while, which is every single time you remember something, you change it. Yes. This is the fact. You only ever have access to the last version of that memory. So memory reconsolidation is when you remember something, you kind of lift it out of the neural regions where it's stored and it becomes malleable. And then it gets laid back down, and that's called reconsolidation. So it gets laid back down with your current awareness of now, with the stories that you've heard about that event, with what people think about that event, with TV shows that might have been going on about that event, and it all gets reconsolidated in. But we would swear that it's our memory. And every time something happens in popular culture that shines a light on it, we ask the wrong questions, right? Like whether it's Hillary Clinton, or the Brian Williams, where, it's like he says something and people are like, that's not true. That's a lie. Instead of, I always get excited like, oh, finally, now we're going to have a conversation about memory reconsolidation, because why would Brian Williams risk his entire career? He's a newscaster here, an anchor guy, quite popular for all these years. His entire career is like decades long. And he remembered being in a helicopter being shot at or something, but really he was in the other helicopter that didn't get shot at. But in that moment, his mind reconsolidated those. But instead, we as a culture, we don't ask about memory. We don't look a little deeper into it. They don't get any experts on to say, no, he's not lying. It's confabulation, but that's his brain doing it. Instead, we just demand a public apology and then shame him. It's ridiculous. And it happens quite often. Because every time it's like a Word document. You open up the Word document, you fix one typo. When you save it, you only ever save the latest version. That's your memory. And so a memory researcher once said, the best way to preserve any memory is to never recall it. So that's
I was going to say, but that's unlikely.
Right. But it's memory reconsolidation as it happens naturally, which is a very subtle, incremental process. What happens in our office, Inez, is therapeutic memory reconsolidation. And that means in a very strategic, therapeutic way, we do something that causes, it's a built-in evolutionary process that has been vital for our survival. This process of memory reconsolidation as a massive update, right? And it is when we've needed to quickly change that our brain does this specific thing. So let me just go into that a little bit so that people can understand how it's possible. 2 minutes? Or are you just saying peace?
Oh, peace in 2 minutes.
Right. So basically, when we remember something, we work with our clients, we access the neural network. Once it becomes malleable, if we introduce something called a prediction error, a mismatch, then in that moment, our brain, goes through this kind of synaptic unlocking that allows us to change the emotional track of any memory. Now, this, if you think of it during cave women's times, right? So being able to, I always tell this one story, think of going to the berry patch if you're a cave woman, because you always know that's where you get the best berries. That's where your memory tells you you always get sweet there. And if you go there and instead you find a herd of saber-toothed tigers has decided to call it home, in that moment, your brain, for survival purposes, causes a massive update to change that memory immediately so you never forget it. So it is no longer the place I remember to go get berries. It is the place I remember to avoid.
Okay.
So it's been happening this whole time.
So on that note, we'll go to
Yes.
break and we'll be back
You're
on
so
the other
funny.
side. Well, welcome back to Hypnosis Everywhere. My great guest, Melissa Tears. And Melissa, what is happening for you now? And what is that thing you were talking about body cognition? What is it? Emotion?
Well, embodied cognition is a fascinating topic. I think it should fascinate everybody with a mind and a body. The way that I teach it in my classes is specific to priming and understanding how words matter, how words are embodied, how our body contributes to our thinking more than we ever imagine. We think that the mind is primary. And yet what we are starting to find out is that we are equally as influenced by our bodies. So some of the ones that people really like are these snippets, right? So I always say that because everything starts from a foundation of early sensory experience from before we're born, right? But certainly as newborns, we make assessments about the world, right? So we know that when we're born, warmth and being held and cuddled and nursed and fed, warm is good. Cold is not, right? Being left alone, maybe not having our diaper changed. So we make these assessments. Warm is good, cold is not. What that then does, it becomes the foundation for all of our other experiences. And so we have these neural networks that branch out from that early sensory experience into, even now, the metaphors we think with, the metaphors we embody. So that if people who are listening to this are holding a warm cup of coffee or tea, then they will rate me as being a warmer individual, because we expand out from that early sensory experience into other regions of the brain. So words cross regions. So you can say things like, I'm starting to warm up to this idea, or you're so warm-hearted, or what a cold bitch, or don't give me the cold shoulder, you're leaving me out in the cold here. Yeah. All of these things that are so deeply embedded in our language and our body and our experience, right? So it's obvious when we talk about, hot and cold. But then there's other things that you want to be aware of if you're a hypnotist or a change worker. If someone is sitting on a softer chair, then they're more likely to change their mind. Or if you want someone to sign your petition, you're better off putting it on a very heavy clipboard, because it lends weight to the issue when we feel the weight. So there's all these different studies that are kind of fascinating as it relates to this idea. Embodied cognition means that thoughts are embodied and are informed by the body. You know, if you wash your hands, then you are less likely to do a charitable action. You washed your hands of it.
Yes, interesting.
It's fascinating. If you are up in front of a judge for sentencing, you better hope that you are not getting him or her when they are hungry. It's the worst time to be sentenced just before lunch. They have found that, I think it's something like 70% harsher sentencing when people are hungry.
Wow, that's a big, big percentage.
Yeah, it's like a big, I mean, I'm not sure of the exact amount, but it's big, it's huge. So all of this stuff comes into play, and we're always being influenced by the unconscious mind and primed outside of our awareness. The color on the walls, you know, will prime you. There's a book called Drunk Tank Pink. And the title comes from a study they did where they found that if they put violent drunks into a cell with pink walls, it acts like a tranquilizer. And so now most hospitals will have, you know, most prisons will have like one room at least that's pink. So we're being influenced like this all the time. It's outside of our conscious awareness, right? And that's just the external. We're influenced by the internal all the time. Our neuroassociations, our histories, the smells in a room. They now have done enough research where they know that they got to pipe in one smell in a women's department at, you know, Saks Fifth Avenue, and a very different scent in the men's department that will get them to pull out their credit cards. Yeah, neuromarketing is a thing. So
I
be
know,
aware.
I believe it. Oh, yeah.
We're being manipulated on every level. It's how do we use this for good? So embodied cognition is understanding the role of the body. You know, when I'm working with people and they tell me about their problem and they're hunched over, the first thing I do once I access the neural network of that is to get them to sit up, to change their posture so that we have better odds of finding a better emotional state. State-dependent learning is a feature of the brain that says like-minded states will attract each other. When you're in a certain biochemical, emotional state, it's really hard to access something else. And one of the fastest ways to shift that is to move the body, right? We know that there's research where, you know, if people put a pencil in between their teeth, so they're in a smile, that within a minute or two, their biochemistry will change to reflect a more positive emotional state. And if they hold it in their lips, so they're frowning, the opposite is true. This is how interrelated that mind-body system is. And that's why Botox can be so detrimental for people, because if you can't move the muscles in your face, then it's hard really to access certain emotional states that go along with that. You know, if you smile, in less than a minute, you're going to start to feel better because you're going to fool your brain. And it just works in a loop. You know, it's very funny. You know, I had said earlier, right, that although I'm brain-centric, I've now started to include a lot more of the body in my work, and the vagus nerve especially, and how the evolution of our nervous system comes into play in every single interaction we have, right? That there's certain things that our nervous system, there's a question our nervous system is asking of the environment countless times a minute. Our nervous system is asking, am I safe? Am I safe? Mm-hmm. Am I safe? And we have no idea the things that trigger safety or not safety, because it's not talked about in our culture. But we kind of have a sense of it anyway. The vagus nerve is that nerve that goes from the brain down into, there's two lines of it. There's the new vagus, which is, you know, which is the newer evolved part that's hooked into our facial muscles, our ear, our inner ear canal, and it's upper diaphragmatic. The lower one, the one that we share with most, you know, mammals, reptiles, you know, that's the lower diaphragmatic. So the vagus nerve is interesting in that it's a feedback loop from the brain to the body, from the body to the brain. And some of the things that signal danger is an affect, a flat, a face, someone who has no expression.
Are we
That
back
tells,
to Botox there?
yes. Well, that's why I'm going off on this tangent, because when we see someone who has very flat affect, like a trauma victim, our nervous system sends a warning signal that we need to back up, that person's not right. The other thing that signals danger is a lack of prosody, which is a lack of intonation and tonality. So a monotone voice signals danger. And I always joke that, Hollywood got it right, because if you want to think of the scariest monsters, what do they have in common? I always say, think of the twins from The Shining. Why are they so scary?
Red room.
Well, that's right, but that's a different thing. That's actually hitting a few other features. But I can talk about that too, and how it signals danger to our vagus nerve, that low growling monotone. But think about it. Those twins have no expression and they're monotone. The two things that will signal danger to our vagus nerve. It's kind of fascinating, right? So unfortunately, when people have Botox where they can no longer make normal expressions, not only are they affecting their own brain's ability to access and create those expressions, but they are also feeding into the unconscious danger signal of the person they're trying to communicate with. Our nervous system, it's not a conscious minded thing. We don't say, ooh, that woman's not, making a normal expression, I don't like her. We have no conscious awareness of it. But something has just put a barrier between us and them. And that is this thing that has evolved with us throughout our history.
I guess that's another reason to just age gracefully.
Yeah, hell yeah, please. Good Lord, people are crazy. People are just crazy. Don't get me started. That's a whole nother freaking topic. We won't even go there.
We won't go there today because we only got 4 minutes. Next show.
So 4 minutes. You had asked what I was up to, right? So I've got things going on. We meet at different parts of the world. You and I are lucky in that we get paid to go to really cool places and share what we do. I've got my center here in New York City, and I've got some classes coming up. I've got a deep trance dive coming up in December, and I've got my integrative hypnosis certification training in June, and anyone can see that on melissatiers.com.
We'll also post anything you want on the page, so it's always there.
I've got something coming up called HT Platinum, which is HypnoThoughts Live, which is the biggest hypnosis conference that usually happens every summer in Vegas, which I'm always there because it's a lot of fun. They have this other new thing they're doing, which is very different format. We're all in the same room. It's got 6 presenters only. We teach for 4-hour chunks, and we get to really hone down. And that is in San Diego in Paradise Point at the end of February. So I'm excited because it gets me out of New York City winter. But I also have some online trainings if people are interested, and that's at the Center for Integrative Hypnosis.com.
Okay.
I'll be back in Spain in September, and I'll be the keynote somewhere in Copenhagen as well at a small hypnosis conference. That's all I can think of. I'm sure there's a lot more coming up. Brazil, I think, in November.
Yeah.
Not this November, next November.
I'm actually pretty happy about that you're there at HT Live Platinum, and Tim Horn will be there for Simpson Protocol. So it's going to be a great one because there's only 2 of the 6 and they're already phenomenal.
Wait, Tim, I didn't know that. I thought it was
So he's not NGH?
No, it's oh, sorry, he's not there. Yeah. It's Greg and the other one. Oh, sorry. Yes,
that's okay.
I have 2 trainers in the States. Sorry.
Okay.
And I was thinking it was HT Live Platinum. I'm not sure. I don't think Greg
Platinum
is
in Paradise Point in San Diego, and it's got Jason Linett, it's got Steve Rame, it's got David Snyder, Ken Guzzo, me.
Still have to say it's still phenomenal. So just
Oh, it's going to be, I'm excited because just I'll be in paradise and I'll be getting to learn from, from people I admire. So it's
So
going to be a
since I
lot of
gave,
fun. Oh my God. And Kelly Woods,
oh yeah, Kelly Woods,
who I adore. Kelly and I wrote a book on integrative hypnosis for kids and teens.
Yeah.
And I got to say, it was the most fun I ever had co-writing a book because I just got to learn from her. And, we were just learning as we went. It was a lot of fun. Anyway, so that's kind of what I'm up to. I've been doing a lot of Skype work and webinars and things like that, getting a little more comfortable with technology because I'm old.
Anyway, that's good. We're drawing to the close of the show. And since I gave Tim Horn a plug in the wrong place, I'll also give my other trainer in the States a plug, and that's on that West Coast side, and that's Gregory Sarton Beckett. So they can find them on my website anyway.
Yeah.
So all right. So not to do a disservice to anyone, we're good, and I have to say goodbye for now.
All right.
And we'll see you next time.
Chatting, Inez. Till next time.
And we'll see you again sometime. Okay.
Bye.
Love you, and bye for now, everybody.